My name is Michelle, and I'm what most people would call successful. At 26, I work as an investment manager at one of the top firms in the city. I have a decent apartment, rented, but still, a good job, and enough savings to finally buy my own place soon. No mortgage, no loans, just the way I want it. Everything was going according to plan until that phone call from Aunt Sarah changed everything. "Michelle, honey, are you coming for Thanksgiving this year?" Her warm voice brought a smile to my face. Aunt Sarah had been more of a mother to me than my actual mother ever was. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it," I replied, already looking forward to her famous apple pie. What I didn't expect was who else would be there. I should probably explain why my aunt's call meant so much to me. You see, I haven't spoken to my parents or my older sister Jessica in 8 years. Not since that day I graduated high school. I had just received my acceptance letter to college with a partial scholarship for investment management. I was over the moon, it was everything I'd worked for. I rushed home to tell my parents, expecting them to be proud. Instead, I got the conversation that would tear our family apart. "We can't pay for your college, Michelle," Mom said, not even looking up from her magazine. "Your sister's getting married soon, and we need all our savings for her wedding." "But what about Grandma's money?" I remember my voice shaking. "She left it specifically for my education, you promised her." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Things change, honey. Jessica's wedding is more important right now. You'll figure something out." That's when everything I'd been holding back for years came pouring out. More important? Just like everything else about Jessica has always been more important. The argument that followed was ugly. Years of feeling second best exploded into accusations and tears. I packed my bags that night and went to the only person who had ever treated me fairly, Aunt Sarah. She took me in without hesitation. What I didn't know then was that she had been saving money for her own son's education. But he had died in a car accident a few years before, and she offered that money to me. I only accepted on the condition that I would pay her back every penny once I graduated and got a job. Those college years were tough. I worked part-time at a cafe while maintaining my grades and scholarship. But I made it through, landed a job at a prestigious investment firm, and 2 years later, paid back every cent to Aunt Sarah. Life was good. I had my independence, my career was thriving, and I had carefully avoided any contact with my family. Until that Thanksgiving invitation. I almost dropped the pumpkin pie I was carrying when I walked into Aunt Sarah's house that Thanksgiving. There they were, my parents, my sister Jessica, and her 2 kids, ages 6 and 3, all sitting in the living room like they belonged there. 8 years of carefully avoiding them, gone in an instant. "Michelle," Aunt Sarah rushed to help me with the pie, her eyes apologetic. I didn't know they were coming, they just showed up. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding. Mom looked older, with more gray in her hair than I remembered. Dad had gained weight. Jessica, well, she still looked like the golden child, even with 2 kids hanging off her arms. "I need some air," I managed to say, turning around and heading straight for the back porch. The November air was cold, but I barely felt it. My hands were shaking as I gripped the railing. "Michelle," Mom's voice behind me made me stiffen. "Can we talk?" 8 years of silence, and now you want to talk. I didn't turn around. "Why are you even here?" I heard her footsteps on the wooden boards as she came to stand beside me. "Because we were wrong. Your father and we've spent years feeling guilty about what we did. We want to make things right." "Then why didn't you call? Write, email, anything?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Because we were ashamed. So ashamed. We kept telling ourselves we'd reach out, but the more time passed, the harder it became. When we heard you'd be here for Thanksgiving, we knew it might be our only chance to see you face to face. To tell you how sorry we are. For everything." I stood there, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to list every single time they'd made me feel less important than Jessica. Another part Well, another part noticed how tired she looked, how her hands trembled as she spoke. I need time to think, I finally said. It's a lot. Of course, she nodded quickly, take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I sat quietly in a corner of Aunt Sarah's living room, pushing turkey around my plate and avoiding eye contact. True to their word, my parents and Jessica didn't push. They chatted with other relatives, played with the kids, helped with dishes, all while shooting occasional guilty glances my way. I watched them when they weren't looking. Mom helping Aunt Sarah in the kitchen, Dad entertaining Jessica's kids, Jessica herself looking somehow both confident and uncertain. They were trying to give me space, but their presence filled every corner of the house. For 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I couldn't think about anything else. Every morning, I'd wake up and replay that conversation with Mom on Aunt Sarah's porch. Every night, I'd lie awake wondering if I was making the right decision by even considering forgiveness. I sat in my apartment one evening, staring at my phone. Mom's number was still saved there. I'd never deleted it, though I couldn't explain why. Maybe some part of me had always known this day would come. My finger hovered over the call button for what felt like hours. Finally, I took a deep breath and pressed it. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Michelle, Mom's voice was cautious, hopeful. Hi, Mom, my voice cracked a little. I've been thinking about what you said at Thanksgiving. I think I'd like to try, slowly. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. Maybe we could start over? That's how I found myself standing outside my childhood home a week later, clutching a bag of carefully chosen gifts. Nothing expensive, just thoughtful items I'd picked up, a scarf for Mom, a book Dad had mentioned wanting years ago, some educational toys for Jessica's kids. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and definitely more worn. The paint was peeling in places, and the garden that Mom used to tend so meticulously was overgrown. This wasn't the pristine suburban home I'd grown up in. Before I could ring the doorbell, the door flew open. Mom stood there, looking nervous but happy. You came. I came, I nodded, stepping inside. The interior was just as telling as the exterior. The furniture was the same from 8 years ago, but now showing obvious wear. The walls needed a fresh coat of paint, and the carpet was threadbare in places. Dad emerged from the kitchen, looking uncertain. Jessica was there too, her kids hiding behind her legs. I handed out the gifts, watching their faces as they opened them. Mom's eyes welled up when she saw the scarf, and Dad actually smiled at the book. Over dinner, Mom had made my favorite lasagna from childhood. The truth about their lives emerged. Jessica's marriage had ended badly 2 years ago, forcing her to move back home with the kids. Mom's health problems had reduced her to part-time work at the library, and Dad had been forced to take a lower-paying position after his company downsized. How about you, Michelle? Jessica asked carefully, pushing her food around her plate. How's work? Good, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I'm at Morton and Associates now. It's a large investment firm downtown. The rest of the evening continued like that, careful conversations, avoided topics, and an underlying tension that nobody wanted to acknowledge. We were all trying so hard to be normal that it felt anything but. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Jessica started showing up at my office during lunch breaks, usually with 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs. We'd sit in the building's courtyard, catching up on 8 years of missed conversations. She told me about her failed marriage, how her ex-husband turned out to be terrible with money, and even worse with commitment. As Christmas approached, I found myself actually looking forward to family celebrations. But first, I had an important stop to make. A coffee maker? Aunt Sarah laughed as she unwrapped her gift. Are you trying to tell me something about my instant coffee? Maybe, I grinned, hugging her tight. Thank you for everything, Aunt Sarah. For being there when I needed you most. She held me at arm's length, studying my face. Are you happy, sweetie? With how things are going with your family? I think I am, I answered, surprising myself with how true it felt. It's different now. Better. Christmas at my parents' house was nothing like the tense dinner from my first visit. Mom had decorated every inch of the place, and Dad was actually singing carols as he helped in the kitchen. Jessica's kids, Emily and Jack, had finally warmed up to me, especially after seeing their presents, a science kit for Emily and a toy dinosaur collection for Jack. Aunt Michelle, they'd squeal, climbing all over me. Can you help us build the volcano? Watching them play with their new toys, I realized how much I'd missed having a family. Even Mom and Dad seemed more relaxed, laughing and joking like they used to when I was little. Months passed, and we fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sunday dinners became a regular thing. Jessica and I had our coffee dates. Then came the spring break trip. I hadn't planned it really, I just overheard Mom saying how the kids had never seen the ocean. Let's go, I said impulsively, next week. I'll book everything. That trip was magical. Watching Emily and Jack's faces when they first saw the ocean, hearing their squeals as they jumped over waves, building sandcastles with Dad like I used to as a kid, it was worth every penny. After the trip, things felt even more natural. Which is why I wasn't entirely surprised when Mom and Dad asked to talk to me one evening after dinner. The plumbing in the house, Dad started, looking uncomfortable. It's pretty bad. We've been putting off repairs, but... We hate to ask, Mom jumped in, but we could really use some help. I wrote them a check right there. It wasn't a small amount, but seeing their relief made it worth it. After that, there were other requests, nothing unreasonable. A new water heater when the old one died. Help with Jessica's kids' school supplies. Small things that family helps each other with. It was during a regular Sunday dinner when Mom dropped the bomb. She'd been quieter than usual throughout the meal, pushing her food around her plate instead of eating. Finally, as Dad was serving dessert, she spoke up. I lost my job, she said, her voice cracking. They're cutting positions at the library, and mine's one of them. I don't know what we're going to do. The medical bills, the house payments. I watched my mother's hands trembling as she held her coffee cup, saw the worry lines deepening on Dad's face. They looked old, suddenly. Vulnerable. Before I knew what I was saying, the words were out of my mouth. I can help, I heard myself say, I can afford $1,500 a month, it's not a problem. The relief on their faces was immediate and overwhelming. Mom started crying again, but this time from happiness. Dad got up and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And so began our new normal. Every month, like clockwork, I transferred the money to their account. They never asked for more than we'd agreed upon, though occasionally they'd mention needing something specific, new winter boots for Jack, or a replacement for their ancient microwave. Jessica and I grew even closer during this time. When I had to travel for work, I started bringing her along whenever I could. Nothing too extravagant, a weekend in Chicago, 3 days in Boston, a quick trip to Miami. Just sisters making up for lost time. Life fell into a comfortable pattern. Sunday dinners, monthly transfers, occasional shopping trips with Mom, helping Jessica's kids with their homework. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like family should feel. Then came the call that would change everything. Michelle? Mrs. Peterson, my landlady, sounded apologetic. I need to talk to you about the apartment. My grandson is graduating from college in a few months, he'll be working in the city, and, well, I promised him the apartment. Oh, I said, looking around at the space I'd called home for so long. The wall I'd painted pale blue on a whim. The window seat where I loved to read on rainy days. I'm so sorry, she said, you've been a wonderful tenant. I'll give you plenty of time to find something else, of course. After hanging up, I sat in my favorite spot by the window, thinking. I'd been saving diligently all these years, even with helping my family. My investment portfolio was doing well. Maybe this wasn't a setback at all. Maybe it was the universe giving me a push. I spent the next few weeks meeting with Sarah, my realtor, viewing apartments during my lunch breaks and after work. I had a clear vision of what I wanted, something modern, close to the office, with enough space for a home office. I was particularly excited about a corner unit in a new building just 3 blocks from work. I could already picture myself here, drinking coffee on the balcony, hosting dinner parties in the open-concept kitchen. But I kept it all to myself, wanting to surprise my family with the news once everything was finalized. "Sorry, Mom, I can't make it to dinner this Sunday," I said during our weekly call. "We've got some problems at work." I was going through paint samples one evening when Aunt Sarah called. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Michelle, can you come over? We need to talk, it's important." I found her pacing in her kitchen, looking more agitated than I'd ever seen her. She barely waited for me to sit down before speaking. "I heard something today," she began, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. "Something you need to know. Linda and Karen were a book club." Linda and Karen, old family friends who'd known us since I was a kid. My aunt continued, each word seeming to pain her. "They were talking about running into your parents and Jessica at the grocery store last week. Apparently, after you started helping them financially, your family's been talking about you to a lot of people." "What do you mean, talking?" But something cold was already settling in my chest. "They've been calling you their personal ATM behind your back," she said bluntly. "Making jokes about how they finally found a use for your fancy job. Jessica's been telling people how she just has to mention wanting to go somewhere, and you'll pay for the whole trip." The room seemed to tilt sideways. That can't be right." "There's more," Aunt Sarah's voice was gentle now. "Your mother's been bragging about how she doesn't really need to find another job, because Michelle's good for the money. They'd been laughing about it, Michelle. Making fun of how eager you are to help them." I sat there, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Part of me wanted to deny it, to defend them. But I knew Aunt Sarah would never make this up. And suddenly, little things started clicking into place, the way they changed the subject whenever my job came up, how the requests for help had become more frequent, the calculating looks I sometimes caught them exchanging. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Aunt Sarah reached for my hand. "I debated whether to tell you, but you deserved to know." I sat there for a long time, thinking about the past year. All those family dinners, the trips with Jessica, the monthly transfers, the grateful tears in Mom's eyes when I helped with bills. Had it all been an act? Then, slowly, an idea started forming. 2 days later, I stood outside my parents' house with 2 packed suitcases, having spent the morning moving all my furniture to Aunt Sarah's garage. I'd rehearsed this, planned every detail. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Mom opened the door, surprise written all over her face. "Michelle? What are you doing here? What's with the suitcases?" Dad and Jessica appeared behind her, equally confused. "Perfect." I let my lower lip tremble, blinking rapidly as if holding back tears. "I got fired," I choked out. "There were budget cuts, and they found some mistakes in my work. They're making me pay back bonuses. I can't afford my apartment anymore. I was hoping, maybe I could stay here? Just for a few months until I get back on my feet." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Mom's concerned expression transformed into something ugly and unfamiliar. "Does this mean you won't be sending us the monthly money anymore?" she demanded, all pretense of sympathy gone from her voice. I felt my heart crack a little, even though I'd been expecting this. "No, Mom, I won't have any extra money for a while." Jessica stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "What about our Europe trip next month? The one you promised to take me on?" My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to maintain the act. I simply shook my head, looking at the floor. That's when all hell broke loose. "You stupid, irresponsible girl," Mom's screech made me flinch. "How could you let this happen? What kind of investment manager gets fired?" Dad joined in, his face red with rage. "We should have known you'd screw this up. Just like you screwed up everything else." "You can't stay here," Jessica spat, grabbing my suitcases. "There's no room, and I'm not sharing my space with a failure." I watched in stunned silence as my sister dragged my luggage to the front porch and dumped them outside like trash. These were the same people who'd hugged me at Christmas, who'd cried grateful tears when I helped them, who'd claimed to be so sorry for the past. "We don't need you here without your money," Mom sneered. "You'll never get another decent job after being fired like this. We're not supporting a deadbeat." I stood there, taking it all in. The masks had finally fallen, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Every Sunday dinner, every family moment, every reconciliation, it had all been a calculated performance. Aunt Sarah had been right. Looking at them now, Mom's twisted expression, Dad's red face, Jessica's contemptuous sneer, I felt oddly calm. Something inside me that had been hanging by a thread finally snapped clean. Without a word, I turned and walked to my suitcases. Behind me, their voices rose in a chorus of insults. "Leech, ungrateful brat, don't come crawling back." I wheeled my suitcases down the driveway in silence, their shouts following me like angry wasps. The neighbors were peeking through their windows now, but I couldn't bring myself to care. 20 minutes later, I was back at Aunt Sarah's house. She took one look at my face and opened her arms. I fell into them, finally letting the tears come. "They showed their true colors, didn't they?" she whispered, stroking my hair. I managed a weak smile, then pulled out my phone. First, I opened my banking app and canceled the monthly transfer to Mom's account. Then I pulled up the travel website where I'd booked Jessica's dream European vacation. 2 clicks, and both the hotel reservation and flight tickets were canceled. The 2 weeks I spent at Aunt Sarah's felt like a cocoon, a safe space to process everything that had happened. During that time, my realtor called with exciting news. "Remember that corner unit you loved? The sellers accepted your offer." Everything moved quickly after that. Paperwork, inspections, final walkthrough, it all became a blur of signatures and meetings. Before I knew it, I was standing in my very own apartment, holding the keys in my trembling hands. Aunt Sarah helped me move everything in from her garage. We spent a weekend arranging furniture, hanging artwork, and making the space truly mine. She even insisted on helping me pick out new curtains for the floor-to-ceiling windows. That evening, after Aunt Sarah left, I did something impulsive. I took a photo of myself in my new living room, the city lights twinkling behind me through the massive windows. I posted it on social media with the caption, "Dreams do come true." Finally a homeowner, no mortgage, no loans, just years of hard work paying off. I knew what I was doing. I knew they'd see it. Part of me wanted them to. Sure enough, my phone rang less than 2 hours later. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "What is this photo about?" she demanded. "What apartment? I thought you were fired." I settled into my new armchair, feeling surprisingly calm. "Actually, Mom, I wasn't fired. I'm still employed, still successful, and now I'm a homeowner too. I just needed to test something." "Test something?" Her voice rose an octave. I could hear Dad and Jessica in the background. "Yes, I wanted to see if you actually cared about me, or just my money." I guess I got my answer when you threw my suitcases out on the porch and called me a leech. There was a moment of stunned silence, then chaos erupted on the other end of the line. Dad was cursing, Jessica was screeching something about deception, and Mom's voice turned sickeningly sweet. "Sweetheart, we were just shocked and worried about you. Of course we care about you. We can move past this little joke of yours. Everything can go back to normal." I actually laughed out loud. "Normal? You mean where I pay for everything while you mock me behind my back? But don't worry about a leech, you can pay your own bills." "Oh, and Jessica? I canceled your tickets to Europe. I think I'll go by myself instead. Goodbye." I hung up and immediately blocked their numbers. Then I blocked them on all social media. It felt like setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for too long. They tried calling from different numbers. They sent emails. They even showed up at my office building a few days later, but I'd already warned security. The sight of them being turned away by the guards should have hurt, but all I felt was relief. That weekend, Aunt Sarah came over for dinner in my new home. I'd cooked her favorite lasagna, and we sat on my balcony watching the sunset. "Are you okay?" she asked, refilling our wine glasses. "I have everything I need right here," I said, raising my glass. "A home of my own, a job I love, and the only family member who ever truly mattered." Aunt Sarah clinked her glass against mine, and we sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights come alive below us. Sometimes, I realized, the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. And sometimes, the hardest lessons lead to the most beautiful beginnings.
My name is Sandra Holmes. I am 40 years old and I have no kids from my second marriage. My husband is a kind man who never misses our monthly dates. No matter how busy he is, he always keeps his promises. I know I shouldn't compare him to my first husband. But I have never regretted my divorce, nor have I regretted getting remarried. And this month is our 8th wedding anniversary. My husband had reserved a table at a fancy restaurant with a view of the sea. I thought we were going to have a wonderful time. But then I ran into the last person I wanted to see. It was Jim Stone, my ex-husband from 10 years ago. We were about to leave the restaurant after finishing our meal, when my husband excused himself to go to the restroom. I was admiring the ocean view from the window. What a beautiful view! As I gazed at the sea, I reminisced about the times my husband and I had spent looking at the ocean together. Just then, I heard someone call my name. And when I turned around, "Hey, what's so beautiful? Do you think a regular ocean appears nice to someone like you who's pretty much broke?" "Jim. Hey, long time no see. Why are you... Why?" "I'm the one who should be asking you why." Jim sat down in the chair my husband had been using, looking at me as if I was a joke. "Yes, those eyes. I put up with those eyes for a whole decade of our marriage. I never thought I'd run into you here. Can someone like you, who doesn't have much money, really eat at a fancy place like this? Can you even afford it? Or are you here for a once-in-a-lifetime thing? It's our wedding anniversary." "Ah. I see. Poor people can only come to places like this on anniversaries, huh? I come here often, you know." "You're still pathetic. Isn't there someone with you?" "Yeah, there is. I just sent her to pay. You know, handling money is a woman's job." I thought he was still the same, always belittling women. "Ah, she's back. Just wait there." The woman who came back was his lover from 10 years ago. She has aged quite a bit, her beauty half what it used to be, and she looks worn out from life. I guess Jim has been living it up while his wife suffers. "You're still wearing shabby clothes, aren't you? Aren't you embarrassed to dress so poorly? Talking to such a terrible man like him makes me feel sick." I turned my gaze toward the restroom, hoping my husband would return soon, and there he was. He had been watching us for a while, as I was talking to another man. Seeing the confusion on my face, he approached us. "Excuse me, do you need something from my wife?" "Your wife? This woman is your wife?" "Yes." "What do you need? You also look poor." "I guess poor women always remarry poor men." "Please don't be rude. My husband is a very respectable man." Jim snorted in disapproval at my response. "Humph. You must be just a useless, broke man." Then he glared at my husband. I thought, this man really hasn't changed at all. Jim was very selfish. Although he worked for a major corporation, it was unclear if he was competent. He was good at sucking up to his boss, though. He blamed his mistakes on his juniors and loudly claimed their achievements were due to his guidance. How he managed to climb the corporate ladder is beyond me. But by the time we divorced, he had become a manager. Jim claimed he was an elite employee, but I never thought of him as elite. I graduated from a prestigious university. That's what Jim would always brag about. Not just any university, but a very different kind from the ordinary ones. When I was only dating him, I believed his exaggerated stories and thought he was really smart. But when we got married, I discovered that was his only real talent. Plus, he consistently degraded me, even though I only completed high school. Your parents were too poor to send you to university, right? But it's good for you. You didn't have the brains for it anyway. If your family had been rich, you would have had to go to university. But it would have been impossible for someone as stupid as you. My family wasn't poor. I just wanted to start working sooner rather than going to college. Enough with the excuses. You can't handle not making excuses, right? You're an incompetent woman, after all. It's good for women, isn't it? Even if they're incompetent or stupid, as long as they have good looks, they can get by. If they catch a competent man, they can live well. I never imagined he would say such things before we married. So his transformation after marriage shocked me. Moreover, his parents weren't wealthy landowners, his father was just a director. Yet he ruthlessly looked down on anyone he considered poor. You really can't do anything right. You're bad at cooking, you can't clean, and you can't even have kids. Marrying you was a huge mistake. It wasn't a physical issue that prevented me from having kids, it was the stress caused by Jim. My family has always valued frugality and cherishing what we have. But when I cooked with radish leaves to save money, he yelled, "Are you trying to feed me trash?" and threw them in the trash. It made me realize how different we fundamentally were. One day, he told me he had a lover. The woman was much younger than he was. He pushed for a divorce, saying it was better for him to remarry a younger woman. I was happy to divorce such a man. I signed the divorce papers. Who is this man, Sandra? He's my ex-husband, Jim Stone. Oh, I see. Of course, I had told my husband about everything Jim had said and done to me. It had been a painful 10 years, and I had shared it all with tears. Then, without saying anything, my husband just listened and finally said, "Let's be happy from now on." You really dared to marry such a woman like her? Since you're marrying a woman from a poor family, you must be a broke guy too. Well, maybe. Maybe not. Of course, you are. So, you're also a broke man, huh? What? Marrying a poor person means you're broke too, am I right? But, why did you divorce such a wonderful person? Wonderful? Your eyes must be fooling you. Truly wonderful means having a beautiful wife like mine. He indicated his wife as he pointed at her, who stood there looking embarrassed. Is that woman your wife? Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she? She's actually my boss's daughter. Marrying the boss's daughter definitely helps one climb the career ladder faster. Marrying a broke woman like you probably means you're just a regular employee. Too bad. A regular employee? I haven't heard that word in years. What are you trying to prove? Bottom-tier guy marrying a bottom-tier woman. It just means you'll both be broke for the rest of your lives. And you think you deserve to eat in such a fancy restaurant like this? Well, this level of restaurant isn't a problem for us. Yeah, sure, if that's what you think. Just then, a waiter passed by. And my husband pulled out a black card, instructing him to settle the bill. Jim, surprised by the black card, tried not to show it but snorted again. Is that a black card? Showing off a card like that here, you're not used to it. Not used to it? You must have borrowed it from someone. Showing off by flashing the card. But later you'll have to pay back the person who lent you that card, right? I can imagine you're scared to splash the cash in such a place. It's all part of your act. Ha! Funny thing to say. Who would lend their card, I wonder? No matter how naive someone is, they wouldn't lend their card. How would you know that? Jim, you shouldn't say such insulting things. What's insulting? I'm just stating the truth. There's no way you could be wealthy if you married a poor woman like her. My wife is poor, you say? Yes, that's right. Her folks' place is a rundown one-floor home. You know that, right? Or maybe you were too embarrassed to visit her home. So you went to a family restaurant instead? Meeting her parents at a family restaurant for a marriage proposal is unheard of. But for poor people like you, it's probably the norm. Family restaurant, huh? The fact that you thought of that means you must have done your greeting there, right? If you hadn't experienced it yourself, you wouldn't have thought of it. What are you talking about? I'm not short on money. I wouldn't do such a miserable thing. Yet you came up with it. I never would have thought of that. Right, Sandra? What about you? Well, I think I'd like to go to a family restaurant occasionally, but we rarely get the chance. Exactly. What? You're lying. When you were with me, you were happy to go to family restaurants. That's because I had never really been to one before. Oh, I bet. You sure talk big. Coming to such a fancy restaurant just makes you want to act all important. Maybe that's you? It seems like you don't fit in this kind of place. What? You seem out of place, don't you think? There's no way I'm out of place. You're the one who doesn't fit in here. Do you even know who I am? Why would I know you? If you want me to remember you, just become famous. I am well known, though. Well, it's impossible for a regular employee like you to know me, I guess. What? I'm a manager, not a regular employee. Manager? Yes, how about that? Impressive, isn't it? At that moment, the chauffeur arrived, greeted politely, and informed my husband. Sir, your car is ready. Thank you. Huh, what's going on? Oh well, you're probably just the president of some small company. I work for a major corporation, the Holmes Group, and I'm a manager there. Oh, you're still just a manager? Excuse me. You consider yourself top tier. But staying as a manager at your age won't bring any advancement. What, this man works at our company? Yes, he's been with our company for a long time. What do you mean our company? You talk big, but you're just an office lady from a small company. That's right, I don't have kids or any reason to quit my job. But. So, you can't have kids? I was right, you can't have kids. Something's wrong with you. Hey, there's a line to how rude you can be. Sandra is perfectly fine. If she's fine, why can't she get pregnant? Women are supposed to have kids. I don't need to explain that to you. You can't say it because it would prove there's something wrong with her. This man is hopeless. Yes, so bad it's beyond saving. This man's name is Jim Stone. Yes, I understand. He's fired. Sandra, please contact HR. Okay. What? What are you saying? Trying to shock me with that? What company's president are you, thinking you can fool me with such an obvious act? Are you stupid? Jim, my husband is the president of the Holmes Group. What? That can't be. However, the driver, with a look of pity, nodded as he looked at Jim. What, seriously? Is he really our president? Yes, and I am his wife and the vice president of our company. What? That's ridiculous. How could Sandra from a poor family end up as vice president? With just a high school diploma? Such things don't matter. Whether someone graduated from high school or college doesn't determine their worth. That's ridiculous. I will never forgive anyone who insults my wife. No, there's a union, yes, there is a union. The union will protect us employees. You're a manager, right? Managers are not union members. So, you are not protected by the union. Didn't you know that? Seriously. Well, you better brace yourself. Since you insulted my wife, you must face the consequences. Oh no. Jim had a stunned look on his face, but my husband didn't care and asked me if we should go. Then, we left the table. That night, perhaps bothered by the afternoon's events, Jim called. His attitude was completely different from his arrogance earlier. Sandra, it's been a while. What do you mean? We already had a talk this afternoon, Jim. Ah, yes. What can I do for you? Your dismissal hasn't been issued yet. Ah, you guys were just joking, right? Huh? What do you mean? About you being the vice president and your husband being the president. No, they're all true. I'm surprised you don't know who your own company's president and vice president are. Why would you be the vice president, though? Because the best way I can help my husband is from the vice president's position. No. But it's strange. Why would a high school graduate be the vice president? It's not strange at all. I only graduated high school because I wanted to start working early. But after we separated, I acquired a college degree. Huh, really? Yes, there are schools you can do from home. So, you really are the president's wife? Yes. How did you manage to marry the president? When did you get married? We got married after I divorced you. I met the president soon after, and we dated for about 2 years before getting married. Why would the president take an interest in someone like you? Stop being so rude. Oh, sorry. Connections are mysterious, aren't they? I just happened to meet the president. Even so, why would he marry someone broke like you? Is he a philanthropist? No one marries for charity. If he's not a philanthropist, did he marry you to make you his slave? It's odd otherwise. Maybe today you got lucky to be taken to a fancy restaurant. But usually, you must be having plain, poor meals, right? And living a difficult life where you can't even buy what you like, am I right? Why would you think that? That's not true at all. You're the only one who would do such a thing. There's no way you could marry such a rich man. Why do you think so? Rich people have connections with politicians and other wealthy people. If a poorly raised woman like you shows up at their parties, it would embarrass the president. Or maybe he lets his mistress attend those instead. You're making wild assumptions. If you keep looking down on me like this, you'll truly regret it. I'm just concerned for you. A woman with a poor upbringing like you marrying a rich man like the president will only suffer. A regular employee's husband would suit you better. Marrying someone richer than me. You must be a foolish woman who can't see ahead. Who's the fool here? If you called just to say that, I'm hanging up. No, wait. I'm not trying to look down on you. It's just true that you come from poverty that can't be helped. Thinking I'm looking down on you for that is completely wrong. You say I come from a poor family, but my father is wealthy. Your family is poorer than mine. I didn't say it back then because of your pride. Your family home isn't even half the size of mine. Your father is just a department head, and you're still just a manager. That's not true. When I proposed to you, you were living in a small single-story house. That was because we were renovating our home then. We had stored all our belongings elsewhere. It was just a temporary residence, no need to move to a big house, my mother said. That can't be true. You don't have to believe it, but since the renovation is finished. Even if you say you want to visit my parents at home, you've stubbornly refused to go again. I couldn't tell you the truth. Who would visit such a poor, run-down house? You really are hopeless. Then, I'll send you a picture. This is my family home. You'll see from the picture. The photo I sent was of a large mansion. That's my house. I lived there for a while after our divorce. What? That can't be true. It's true. If this is true, then why were you working as an office lady in a small company? If you're so rich, you wouldn't need to work. And if you did work, wouldn't it be at a large corporation? Indeed, my father is the president of a major company. That company was a new one he started. When it was time to decide who would be the president, it was decided that my brother would take the role. So, I volunteered to handle the administrative work. Now, that company has advanced to the top of the industry. Is that true? Were you really so rich? Yes, this is the truth. This is the real me that you used to look down on. So, that's why you could marry the president? That's not it. I met the president because we shared the same hobbies. We met through our hobbies and hit it off. He didn't know I was the daughter of a wealthy family. And I didn't know he was the president. So, you are at the company where I work because of that? How long have you been at that company? I joined the company right after our divorce. I had a connection by chance. Why? When you were with me, you were a clerk at your brother's company. And after we divorced, you changed jobs? That's right. My brother's company has grown so much. And he told me it was time to do what I love. So I thought I might as well pursue what I've always wanted to do. Then, just as a senior position became vacant, they headhunted me. But at that stage, I still had no acquaintance with the president. He was still someone high above. I don't understand. How can you have connections like that? So, rich people just connect with other rich people? That's why I'm saying those things don't matter. Why do you think like that? It's because of that mindset that you're still just a manager. I wonder why your wife hasn't gotten tired of you yet. She can't get tired of me. I'm supporting her. Keep it up with that attitude, and you'll get what's coming to you. Anyway, that's the situation, so stop belittling me already. I wasn't trying to belittle you. I really thought you were poor. About that dismissal you mentioned this afternoon. Oh, yes, your dismissal. After all the mocking you did, it's only natural you'd be dismissed. That would make me in a tough spot. Can you talk to the president so I don't get fired? What? You were just mocking me tremendously, and yet you ask not to be dismissed? That's impossible, you know. I have nothing but resentment towards you. Why? The fact that you don't think you're resented is truly astonishing. What have I done to you? There's too much to even remember, it's that much. I bet your wife thinks the same as me. Why don't you ask her what she really thinks? Though I doubt she'll tell you. I only said those things because I thought you were poor. Why do you think I'm mocking you when I'm just being honest? Once words are spoken, they can't be taken back, you know? You should understand that as an adult. I do understand that. Then you should understand why you're being dismissed, right? No, I don't understand at all. Please, I'll be in trouble if I'm dismissed. If it were just about this afternoon, the president might have overlooked it. But then you had to call and ask why this and why that. My husband is here now, frowning. He really thinks you're hopeless. Maybe you should just give up, there's no saving you. No. If the president is right there, why can't you just say so? It's only natural for a husband and wife to be together. Besides, you didn't ask if someone was with me, did you? That's true, but you've poured gasoline on your own fire. You mocked not just me, but my parents and my husband too. Look, I didn't think you'd get this angry. Please forgive me. If I had known you were a wealthy lady, I wouldn't have said such mocking things. I won't say them again, please forgive me. Just give up. I think your dismissal order will come down tomorrow. Wait, please. Jim's voice echoed on the other end of the phone, but I hung up and looked at my husband. The next day, Jim came to the president's office. His face was all white, with dark circles under his eyes. And he seemed to be in a really bad condition. I was in a meeting with my husband, the president, about business matters. But I was startled by Jim's appearance. Jim, what's wrong? I'm very sorry. Jim apologized as he sat down on the spot. Jim, what are you doing? Please, just don't fire me. What do you mean? Of course, the president knew about yesterday's conversation. He had guessed from my responses during the call. And I had detailed Jim's remarks after hanging up. Therefore, his impression of Jim was very poor, and his anger was greater than mine. I am truly sorry again. I didn't know your wife was from a wealthy family. I think she is a perfect match for the president's wife. I also heard she graduated from university, even if it was through correspondence. She's a hard worker, a far cry from my own wife. So you decided on her as your wife, and then you got rid of her, right? What? Jim looked up at the president, wondering how he knew such a thing. Of course, I've told my husband everything. We're married, after all. Or do you and your wife not talk about your pasts? No, it's not like that, but that was a long time ago. I was young then. I thought Sandra was just a poor man's daughter. So I thought it was okay to have a mistress. How does it come to that? Is that why you think it's okay to commit sexual harassment or power harassment? What do you mean? Don't tell me you haven't done it? There are complaints from your female coworkers. They say if our company doesn't handle it, they'll go to the police. Our company was just discussing what to do about it. When your disrespectful remarks came yesterday. It's really hopeless, isn't it? That's right. I wouldn't have thought you were actually harassing or bullying. But watching you yesterday, it seemed all too true. You don't even regard women as people, do you? You think they're below you. No, I never, even if that were true, firing me would be too harsh. Please, show some mercy. Well, indeed, you have a family. If you were fired, you wouldn't be the only one in trouble. That's right. Exactly. My husband smirked and looked at me. So, what do you think, Sandra? How about sending Jim to our Ohio branch? Wait, what? The Ohio branch is in a region with very few people, practically unsustainable as a company. The former president, who came from that town, established the branch there to help the local people. But it's a lonely place with just one employee. The previous employee reportedly went mad from the loneliness. We want you to turn that branch around in 3 years. If you can do that, we'll bring you back here. Of course, if you can't, you'll spend your retirement in Ohio. Thank you. I appreciate it. Under the guise of the president's mercy, Jim set off for the Ohio branch. But both myself and my husband knew it was an impossible task. Having to work tirelessly alone for the small number of town residents. It was obvious that there wouldn't be any profit to be made. Unaware of this, Jim moved to the branch all motivated. His transfer was with his mistress who had been his wife. But surely she wouldn't be satisfied with just the cold and nothing else there. And eventually, she reached her limit. His salary plummeted, and despite being the branch manager in name, his pay was minimal, leading his wife to start yelling. This resulted in daily arguments. And although he boasted that if he turned things around in 3 years, he could return to the head office, his city-bred wife couldn't believe his words. She left the divorce papers and went back to the city. Jim tried his best for a year, but no matter how hard he worked, the population wouldn't increase and no profits would come. Eventually, he realized that no amount of effort here would change anything. And one day submitted his resignation. After leaving the company on his own terms, Jim contacted his wife, but by then, she had found someone new. Jim was not only ignored by her, but was beaten up by her new man. And ended up in the hospital. After being discharged, Jim looked for a job, but at his age, he found nothing. And life became harder for him. He lived in a shabby, run-down apartment. And the only job he could find was as a nighttime store clerk. The man who had once boasted of graduating from a prestigious university now stood alone in a store at night. As for me, I continued to be protected by my kind husband. Enjoying another wonderful date this month. Marrying him changed my life so much, I'm grateful that Jim and I divorced.
Vanessa. I want a divorce. I see. No matter the reason, I can't live with someone who has been unfaithful. Let's get divorced right away. I printed out the divorce papers on the computer and presented them to David. Sign it now. I will sign it after, and we can submit it immediately. I'm sorry for hurting you. Thank you for understanding. We will be happy. As David and Alex were about to leave, Alex approached me and whispered in my ear. It's going to be a luxurious life for me from now on. Sorry for stealing David from you. After saying that, Alex showed a triumphant expression and left arm in arm with David. After all the divorce filing process was done, Alex stretched and spoke to me. Finally, it's over. Well, I guess this was necessary for me to be happy with David. Vanessa, good luck living a frugal life. With a triumphant look, Alex laughed condescendingly at me. I didn't respond. David looked puzzled, but then joined the conversation. Why does it turn into a conversation about Vanessa becoming poor for divorcing me? Huh? Because you're a high earner, David. Since Vanessa is a housewife, she'll lose her income, right? Hearing Alex's words, David burst out laughing. What are you talking about? We are the ones who will be living the poor life. My name is Vanessa. I'm a working housewife. My job is very busy, and I spend a lot of time away from home. David, my husband, supports me by taking care of all the household chores. He's essentially a full-time house husband. We've only been married for 3 months. Despite my absence from home, David never complains and always takes care of me when I'm tired from work. I truly appreciate him. We had a harmonious marriage. But I never thought that the arrival of a certain person would change everything. One day, when I got home, David spoke to me. Can I invite an old friend of mine over sometime? That's fine, but it's unusual for you to invite someone over. I met up with him after a long time recently. We had a great time and agreed to meet again. I want to introduce him to you. David smiled as he explained the situation, and I couldn't help but smile too. That's great, thank you. I should be able to take the next weekend off. So please ask him about his schedule? Okay, thanks, Vanessa. With a happy face, David immediately started sending a message on his phone. I've hardly ever seen David angry or in a bad mood. I love his kind and honest nature and carefree smile. David's old friend is named Alex. He's free next weekend, so he's coming over. David holds him in high regard. He must be a wonderful person. I was also looking forward to meeting Alex. The next weekend, Alex visited our home. David was busy cooking various dishes since the morning to entertain his childhood friend. His skills in house chores are quite impressive, especially his cooking. The delicious-looking dishes were lined up on the table. Alex would surely be pleased. Alex is nearby. I'll go pick him up. With that, David left the house to welcome Alex. Our home is in a high-rise apartment with a concierge always stationed at the entrance. First-time visitors often get confused, so we make it a point to go out and welcome our guests. I wondered what he would be like. As I waited eagerly for her arrival, I heard the door opening. Come in, please.
Hello.
Hearing the conversation, I was puzzled. The voice sounded high for a man. When Alex entered the living room, I was surprised. Wow, what a room! It's so luxurious. There stood a woman, looking around the room curiously. David. This person. Let me introduce you. This is my childhood friend, Alex. Alex, this is my wife, Vanessa. Hello, nice to meet you, Alex here. Hello, nice to meet you. I hurriedly returned the greeting. Assuming from David's childhood friend and the androgynous name Alex, I thought a man was coming. David could have mentioned she was a woman. While slightly uneasy, David and I entertained Alex. As we moved to the dining table for dinner, Alex naturally sat next to David. Normally, wouldn't David and I sit next to each other? I thought, but David seemed unconcerned. It wasn't a formal occasion. And so I didn't make any particular comment as Alex deliberately moved her chair closer to David as she sits next to him. This house is really amazing. The furniture is luxurious too, it's really nice. Right? We can live like this thanks to Vanessa. Really? A couple supporting each other, huh? Alex gazed up at David, looking into his face without ever glancing at me. I just watched the two of them talk. Watching Alex touch David occasionally while they talked cheerfully, I felt uncomfortable. David seemed to not mind. But it was easy to imagine that Alex did not think of David as just an old friend. Remaining silent to avoid ruining the mood, David suddenly turned to me and said, "She's fun, right?" He truly believed that, not as a taunt. So, I responded with a forced smile.
Yeah.
Surely, David did not realize how I felt. He must think I'm genuinely enjoying myself. Then, Alex, who had never spoken to me directly before, turned to me and said, "I'm really having fun. Can I come over again?" Her smile did not reach her eyes. Seeing my vague response, David beamed and said, "I'm glad you two are getting along." After that, Alex started visiting our house several times a week. At first, she came on weekends when I was home. But gradually her visits became more frequent, even during my working hours. Today, as I returned home, I heard chuckles coming from the living room. I sighed and entered the living room. There, David and Alex were sitting together on the sofa, laughing joyfully. Alex was intertwined with David's arm. Even when she noticed my return, she made no move to let go. Already tired, this sight only drained me further. David greeted me with a smile, "Welcome back, Vanessa." Without addressing me, Alex simply said, "I'll be leaving then," and left the house. Alex was here again? Hasn't she been coming over too much lately? I had to ask as it was draining me. While preparing dinner, David replied, "Yeah, she has. But Alex recently got divorced and moved back in with her parents. I think she's feeling lonely because everyone around her is busy with work or their own families. I feel sorry for her. But I honestly don't feel good about you two meeting when I'm not around. She is too close to you, which makes me feel uneasy. I wish you would limit it a bit." I believe David has no ill intentions. He genuinely wants to help a friend in need. However, I couldn't help but dislike how Alex would touch David casually in front of me and make herself at home during the day. David listened to my concerns, apologized, and agreed to reduce the frequency of their meetings. All I could do was trust David's word. However, Alex still kept coming to our house. Although she targeted times when I was at work, and I never saw her face to face, I knew of her visits. She deliberately left her stuff behind for me to notice. It was obviously a provocation. Despite fewer visits, she was still coming weekly, so I voiced my concerns to David again. David confessed, "I did tell her clearly. But every time, she says, 'Okay,' and then starts crying at the entrance, saying how hard and sad she feels, and I can't bring myself to send her away." I couldn't blame David further and just asked him to keep urging her to reduce her visits. He apologized each time, but the situation did not improve. A month passed since Alex's first visit. She continued to visit our house, and I was mentally exhausted. I wanted to stop her visits somehow. With that determination, I headed to a place I normally wouldn't go alone, David's parents' home. Perhaps there might be some interaction between the families since they were childhood friends. I thought I might find a solution there. I reluctantly rang the doorbell at my in-laws' home. I usually avoid this place for a reason. "Oh, Vanessa. Are you alone? It's been a while, Mother." My mother-in-law, seeing me alone, opened the door with an evident look of displeasure. "She is the reason I am disliked. What brings you here all of a sudden?" "I haven't been able to visit for a while, so I thought I'd stop by to say hello." "I'm not pleased to see you. If David were with you, maybe I could tolerate it, but your visit alone is a waste of my time. It's almost refreshing to be spoken to so harshly face to face." Responding poorly would only add fuel to the fire. The best strategy was to smile politely and let it slide. "You're not a charming daughter-in-law at all. If only someone like Alex was my daughter-in-law, we could have built a good relationship." I was surprised to hear Alex's name come up. It was fortunate that the topic came from her, otherwise it might have seemed suspicious if I brought it up. My mother-in-law continued without minding my presence. David and Alex have always been close. She used to say she would marry David. And now he's married to a woman who can barely manage household duties and doesn't care for her home. I'm truly disappointed. I'm sorry, I haven't lived up to expectations. Rather than making excuses, I apologized. Yet, my mother-in-law continued to grumble about me, repeatedly saying, Alex would have been a better wife. If David and Alex were to marry, my mother-in-law would undoubtedly be overjoyed. With that thought, I absently listened to her nagging. 2 months since Alex's first visit was about to pass. Her visits continued. I became numb to seeing the forgotten items of hers. Vanessa, there's something important I need to talk about. David, who is usually smiling, approached me with a serious expression that day. The unusual seriousness in his demeanor made me tense.
Yeah.
What is it? Are you free this weekend? I'd like to have a serious talk. That's fine, but does it have to wait until the weekend?
Yeah.
The weekend would be better. With that, David left the living room. What could this important talk be about? We seem to be fine when it's just the two of us. Could it be about Alex? I felt uneasy. Part of me wanted to get it over with quickly. And another part didn't want the weekend to come, a mix of feelings. When the weekend arrived, my suspicions seemed to be confirmed. Alex was there, looking unsurprised to be involved in the discussion. David was the first to speak. Vanessa. I want us to get a divorce. I somewhat anticipated this. I feared our marriage might be falling apart. Yet, I had hoped he would choose me in the end. To think that just one person could end our marriage so easily. Not even half a year into it, felt like a blow to the head. I like being needed. You being busy with work and leaving the household duties to me made me feel needed. I felt like I was supporting you. I thought so too. I believed it wasn't about gender roles, but about supporting each other in what we were good at and enjoyed. I thought we could do that together with David. But she can't do anything by herself. She can't live without my support. I need to be there for her. David really believed that. His desire to help someone in trouble and to be supportive was genuine. Whether it was right to abandon his wife to help someone else, however, was questionable. Glancing at Alex, she looked down but didn't seem remorseful. People who are sorry don't sit back comfortably and cross their legs on the sofa. She probably thought she finally managed to take David from me. David's obliviousness to these nuances might be considered a flaw. I suddenly felt foolish for being so serious about it. David's nature won't change. Even now, he might feel guilty towards me. But his actions were driven by a spirit of helping others. If I thought about it as him acting out of a desire to serve, it seemed unlikely that he would cut ties with Alex even if we didn't divorce. As long as I remained married to David, it seemed like this issue would haunt me forever. It felt quicker to just agree to the divorce now. I see. Regardless of the reason, I can't live with someone who has been unfaithful. Let's get divorced immediately. I printed out the divorce papers on my computer and thrust them in front of David. Sign it now. I'll sign it after and submit it immediately. David seemed taken aback by my swift action but took the papers and began to fill them out right there. I'm sorry for hurting you. But thank you for understanding. We will be happy. As he said this, David handed me the filled-out divorce papers. I took them without a word. As David and Alex were about to leave, Alex approached me and whispered, "We're going to live luxuriously from now on." Sorry for taking David from you. After saying that, Alex displayed a triumphant expression and left arm in arm with David. It seemed she was under a significant misunderstanding. But I no longer felt obligated to correct her. Regarding the divorce, I decided to hire a lawyer and arrange for a settlement. Since we had no children, the main discussion was about the division of property. Today, David, Alex, and I were supposed to meet at the lawyer's office to discuss. David declared he would agree to my terms. Alex objected discontentedly, but David silenced her, reminding her that it was only fair since they both hurt me. I demanded a fair division of property rights and sought compensation for their affair from both. Alex looked displeased at the mention of compensation, but her expression softened slightly when David said he would pay for both. After all the divorce procedures were completed, Alex stretched and addressed me. Finally, it's over. Well, I guess it was necessary for me to be happy with David. Vanessa, good luck living a frugal life. Alex laughed condescendingly at me. I didn't respond. David looked puzzled, but then joined the conversation. What are you talking about? Frugal life? What does that mean? Well, because she's divorcing you, right? Now she'll have to live a poor life. It's sad, really. Why would Vanessa be poor for divorcing me? Because you're a high earner, David. Since Vanessa is a housewife, she'll lose her income, right? Hearing Alex's words, David paused momentarily, then burst into laughter. What are you talking about? We're the ones who will be living the poor life. Huh? Alex looked at David and me in complete shock. I chose not to join the conversation. David, holding his stomach, continued laughing and speaking. Didn't I tell you Vanessa is the CEO? I never said I was the one working. You did say that, but I thought it was a joke. Was that true? Why would I lie about that? I was the house husband, and Vanessa was the one working. She's the president of the well-known ABC company. Hearing the company's name, Alex turned to me in disbelief. ABC company? The one that was on the news with annual sales of $150 million, that famous one? You're joking, right? I'm flattered you know of it. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Vanessa, president of ABC Company. I handed her my business card. Alex took it slowly, still in shock. The business card clearly displayed the company name. Alex's hands trembled slightly. Why? Your mother said David was an elite high earner. How can this be? Hearing this, David was now the one surprised. I listened silently to their conversation, thinking that Alex and my mother-in-law must have been conspiring after all. Mom too, why is she under that impression? I've told you what Vanessa does, haven't I? But your mother keeps saying it's unthinkable for a woman to earn more. She also said a woman should do all the housework, and that failing to fulfill wifely duties is disgraceful, among other things. What? That's ridiculous. Such thinking is outdated. David sighed, clearly frustrated with his mother's views. But I chose you over Vanessa. It's not about the money, it's for love. You understand that, right? While David spoke to Alex with a smile. Alex just stood there, dazed, seemingly unable to follow the conversation. Can we conclude this discussion now? You both agree with what's been settled, right? Yes, this finalizes our procedures. I feel terrible for hurting you, Vanessa. I'll make sure we don't interfere with your life again. Good. Make sure that person there and your mother also get the message to stay out of my affairs. Understood. Then, we'll be going now. David supported a completely deflated Alex as they left the law office. The shock of learning her conquest was actually a homemaker must have been profound. Whether they can build a good relationship going forward is highly questionable. But that's no longer my concern. I felt relieved to be free from this mess and found myself feeling lighter. Then, one day, while I was enjoying my newly single life, my secretary informed me that a woman was causing a scene at the entrance, demanding to see me. She wasn't a business contact, and she insisted on seeing the president. Despite my busy schedule, I instructed my secretary to bring her to the reception room and to stay with me. As expected, Alex was there, looking frantic and out of sorts. I regretted giving her my business card that day. "What brings you to my office so suddenly? Don't you realize that causing a scene at the entrance is a nuisance? I don't know your contact details, and when I tried going to your house, the concierge stopped me at the entrance. I couldn't talk to you, so I had to come here. We finished our negotiations the other day, didn't we? I never wanted to see you again. I didn't come here because I wanted to." Alex slammed her hand on the table. My secretary looked displeased, but I gestured for her to stay calm. "That's right. I came here to complain to you." "Complaint?" "Yes. You said there was a division of assets, but what about that amount? For the president of a big company like you, aren't you being stingy?" Alex ranted, clearly lacking composure. "I'm not being stingy. It was a fair amount." "Lies." "It's true." I doubted she would back down easily. Despite finding it tedious, I decided to explain. First of all, our marriage lasted only 6 months. During that period, we split my income fairly. And from that, compensation was paid to you and David. So it's only natural that the amount you received was less. At the mention of compensation, Alex gasped. She realized why tens of thousands had vanished, the reason tied to the compensation. For her and David. Still, why can't we live in that high-rise apartment? And the furniture, all of it should be our shared property, right? It's unfair that you get to keep everything. Alex persisted, and I grew weary of dealing with her. I explained calmly, looking away. "By the way, I felt uncomfortable when you first came to my house and looked around so freely. If we bought it after getting married, as you said, it would indeed be shared property." "What do you mean?" "That high-rise apartment and the furniture in the house. I bought all of it when I was single. So, everything is mine. There's not even a 1% chance you could live there." Faced with these harsh realities, Alex was visibly shocked. She murmured almost inaudibly, "That can't be. I thought if I married David, I'd get the property. The luxurious furniture, everything. Too bad you were deluded. But, you got a kind and skilled homemaker as a husband. Be happy with that." That's exactly the problem. Reinvigorated by my comments, Alex raised her voice. "What now?" "David tells me to work. He says I'm suited to be a homemaker, so you should go out and earn. I married David thinking I could live easily without working. If one partner takes care of the home, it's only natural for the other to work." Though Alex has her own issues, David can't be blamed for complaining. His ability to be a homemaker was only feasible because he was with someone like me, who wanted to work outside. Someone like me, who loves to work, would find a partner who handles household chores like David very suitable. I've always lived at home and never really worked. Now I'm juggling part-time jobs, but can't secure a stable income because I can't get a full-time job. David doesn't get mad, but he says, with my cooking skills, I can easily whip up cheap meals. So let's save money together as a couple. It's so annoyingly positive. That's true. He can be a bit troublesome. David's positivity is one of his strengths, but his inability to read the room can be irritating at times. He keeps saying things like, even if we live a frugal life, as long as we're together, it's fine. I'm confident I can make simple dishes exciting every day. I thought you'd be the one struggling with a frugal life, and I was happy about it. If I knew it would turn out like this, I would never have married David. I don't need a man like that, take him back. Her frustration probably stems from not being able to live the lavish life she imagined. She's forced into poverty, with a nice but unambitious husband. It's her own fault for being self-centered, and now she's facing the consequences. It's all her fault, yet she needs to blame me to feel better about herself. However, I couldn't care less. I don't care about your feelings. And I don't need a man who's cheated, whatever the reason. Is that all you wanted to say? Then please leave. As I spoke, my secretary didn't wait for Alex's response and quickly called security to escort her out. I could hear her shouting in the hallway, but her voice faded away. I instructed the security to keep her out if they see her again. I sighed deeply, tired of all the drama. Since then, there had been no more visits from Alex, and I was able to work peacefully. One day, as I was leaving the office without having to work late, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. Startled and unable to speak, I cautiously looked to find my mother-in-law glaring at me with anger. There you are. I've been waiting for hours, and you just wouldn't come out. How could you turn away your mother-in-law from your home like that? What kind of person does that? Following Alex, my mother-in-law showed up. I had forgotten there was another troublesome person. Her relentless waiting for me to come out of the office was unsettling. I responded firmly, hiding my discomfort. David and I are divorced now, so we're strangers. There's no reason to let someone who has no relation to me into my home. I've made sure the building management knows only people I approve can enter. The nerve. Respect your elders. She yelled in a shrill voice I had never heard before, which was quite unpleasant to my ears. I would, if there were anything respectful about you. Besides, why are you laying in wait? What do you need? Laying in wait sounds so sinister. I came all this way because I have something important to tell you. I didn't ask for that. I wanted to run away from this place immediately to escape her, fearing she might lay in wait again. I didn't want to meet this woman ever again. But I decided to listen to her to end everything today. Why didn't you tell me honestly that David wasn't working? Because you deceived me, I'm suffering terribly now. I told you many times. I was working while David took care of our home. You called me a liar and ignored it every time. Blaming me for her own misunderstandings was troubling. Then, you should have made sure I understood. I started living with David and his wife thinking I could enjoy a luxurious life. But the house isn't a high-rise apartment, and it's a simple meal every day. I can't stand it. You were after money too. Like Alex, you suffer because you rely on others' money. Shut up. It's all your fault that I'm in this situation now. Pay me a living allowance for life. That's absurd. How could that possibly be justified? Besides, isn't your husband working? Even if David and Alex can't provide, you should be able to manage for now, right? Indeed. My father-in-law was still active. Although he had been on a long-term business trip for many years and rarely returned home. However, there were occasions when I met him a few times a year. And he was always very kind to me. Dealing with my mother-in-law's nagging was troublesome, but tolerable thanks to my father-in-law's kindness. Well, that's... She struggled to respond convincingly. When he came back recently, he found out about Alex's remarriage. And he divorced me. I was kicked out of the house, so I decided to live with David and Alex. It's natural for a father to ask questions when he returns after a long time and finds his son's wife has changed. My mother-in-law probably badmouthed me and made my father-in-law uncomfortable. But even after splitting with him, I thought I could live luxuriously because David was rich. So I asserted myself, and now I can't rely on your father-in-law either. It's truly astonishing. My father-in-law was a compassionate man who treated me kindly. If you reciprocated his feelings, he surely would have helped you. But this situation is your own doing because you disregarded everyone else. I certainly won't help you. My mother-in-law initially seemed a bit subdued, but as I firmly refused to help, her expression filled with anger again. How cruel. Inhuman. To think I have to beg someone like you. Whatever you say. If you continue to cause a scene, I'll call the police. It's a nuisance to have such commotion in front of my company. Hearing the word police, my mother-in-law's face turned pale. She bit her lip in frustration and left without saying anything else. Her shoulders slumped, burdened by despair. Here's what I heard from the lawyer later. Apparently, David, Alex, and my mother-in-law are still living together. David wanted to remain a homemaker, but realizing that Alex, and my mother-in-law couldn't earn enough together, he started looking for work. However, having not worked for several months without reasons like rehabilitation or caregiving, David could only find employment at a low-paying company. Eventually, David's salary alone wasn't enough. And Alex and my mother-in-law also had to take up part-time jobs just to scrape by. When David was the sole homemaker, the house was spotlessly clean. And homemade meals were served daily. Now, with everyone busy working, the house is a mess, meals are often pre-made, and arguments have become more frequent. Meanwhile, I was living a comfortable and carefree life. If I wanted a clean house, I could just hire a house cleaning service. And there were plenty of delicious dining options and deliveries available. I'm not averse to cooking, on the contrary, I sometimes find it a pleasant diversion. I was thoroughly enjoying my independent life. As for my work, I recently started a new business deal with the company where my father-in-law works, allowing us to meet again. Vanessa, I'm truly sorry. It's unforgivable what my foolish ex-wife and son have put you through. No amount of apologies can suffice. My father-in-law apologized to me, but he wasn't to blame for the recent events. Please, don't apologize. Although we're no longer family, I'd be happy if we could maintain a good relationship going forward. With that, my father-in-law smiled slightly and thanked me. After all this, I'm quite averse to romance for a while. I've decided to focus fully on my career.
Mother, your face is all red. Were you shocked to hear my husband's true feelings? You don't need a son like that anymore, do you? What? Please cut ties with me as a parent. Mom, you're not only out of money, you might end up in debt from cleaning up the factory, right? It's troublesome if you're targeted for money. And, I hate it when you're broke and in debt, yet you still ask for care. I see. I understand now. Then, I'll take everything that belongs to Dad. That's fine, right? Yeah, that's fine. Please take care of the rest. After my husband passed away, my eldest son spoke his true feelings without any reservations. Having always disliked both me and my husband, he decided I was of no use to him and demanded that we cut ties. I was almost relieved to do so. 2 years later, I found myself sitting on a bench outside the supermarket, having a simple lunch. It was there that I encountered a face I did not wish to see. "Is that you, Mom?" "It really is. It's been a while. Are you having lunch here? And from that food truck over there? What a luxurious lunch you have." "Luxurious? Don't you think a food truck bowl is a luxury item if you have no money? What kind of poor life are you leading now? Are you still working, or are you living on a pension? Can you live on just your pension? If not, can you receive welfare? Are you actually living on welfare? This is the first time I've seen someone living on welfare. How is life at the bottom of welfare?" Forever scorned by my eldest son and his wife, who saw me as poor, I decided to enlighten them about my situation. "I'm Kathy, 59 years old, and work at a small auto repair shop owned by my husband, Michael. Life has always been hard, but I managed and felt some happiness working with my husband. I believed Michael felt the same. However, our son, Ryan, didn't always see it that way. As a middle schooler, he became clearly rebellious. "Don't come near me. You stink of oil. What are you saying to your father? He is working hard for us. Mom, don't be so mad. It's true he stinks of oil." Ryan shouted at Michael as they passed in the living room. I immediately defended my husband, which Ryan did not like. He glared at me and stomped off to his room. Michael seemed not to care, but his actions said otherwise. Teenage rebellion is inevitable, especially when we live in a not-so-clean auto repair shop and aren't wealthy. But such rebellions are usually resolved over time. The cafe nearby seems to have shut down. Really? Wasn't it just established last year? Yeah. It hasn't even been a year. Doing business is really tough. I really appreciate what my parents are doing. A cafe and an auto repair shop are different, right? Still, maintaining a business is the same. As a college student, Ryan understood the hardships of self-employment and stopped being venomous. Although Michael heard the exchanges, he pretended not to while reading the newspaper. I considered confronting him but decided against it, thinking it too mean. After graduating from college, my eldest son moved out of the house. Make sure you don't oversleep and be late for work. Don't just eat microwave food or supermarket side dishes. Try to cook for yourself. Don't worry so much. I'll be fine. See you, Dad. Don't worry about it. He would only suffer by taking over such a small shop. I watched Ryan's back as he left, larger than I remembered. As he vanished, Michael and I silently confirmed our parenting was complete. After my eldest son moved out, he seldom returned home. He only came back for Christmas, and without a call from us, there wouldn't be any contact. It felt a bit lonely, but I thought that was just how boys were. I felt lucky that he still returned for Christmas and answered our calls. However, about 5 years ago, he stopped coming home altogether and even stopped answering his phone. I became very worried due to the complete lack of communication, but my husband didn't seem nearly as concerned. I wonder if he's all right. If he's managing to live well. Are you worried about Ryan again? He's fine. He would contact us if something was wrong. Michael responded without looking up from his newspaper, tired of the same conversation. Ryan was 31, an important age for work and marriage, yet no contact worried me. I reluctantly placed a cup of coffee in front of Michael with a louder thud than usual. But soon, Michael's perspective proved correct. Mom, it's been a while. I'm coming home soon. There's someone I want you to meet. Wait, what does that mean? Yeah, that's what it means. Make sure you're ready and don't embarrass us. I was thrilled by the call from Ryan after such a long silence, and even more so by the news of his marriage. Excited, I rushed to Michael. Guess what? He's getting married. Are you talking about a celebrity marriage? No. Ryan is getting married, and he's bringing his bride home. See, there was no need to worry. Michael smirked at me. Despite my annoyance, I had to admit he was right. Soon, Ryan would bring his bride home. No parent could help but feel a bit nervous. Am I okay? Do I look strange? Relax, you've changed outfits several times already. It's just a greeting, there's no need to worry so much. I can't help but worry. It's the first time meeting her, and she's going to marry Ryan, after all. Today is the day Ryan is bringing his fiancée home. I've been bustling about since the morning, but my husband is leisurely reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. I wonder what kind of person Ryan is bringing. My heart is full of hope and anxiety, but I'm more hopeful, eagerly waiting for their arrival. However, my expectations would soon be disappointed by this marriage introduction. An hour later, Ryan and his fiancée arrived at our home. We're home. I'll introduce her quickly. This is Sarah, whom I'm going to marry. Nice to meet you. I apologize for the intrusion. Nice to meet you. I'm Ryan's mother, Kathy. Come in, your father is waiting in the living room. We exchanged brief greetings at the entrance. Ryan's fiancée looked stylish and beautiful, the very image of a modern adult woman. She seemed a bit younger than Ryan. Unlike my humble days working at the auto repair shop, she radiated a sparkling aura. Then I headed to the living room where my husband was waiting. Dad, long time no see. Indeed, it feels like 100 years. You don't even call, you unfilial child. I came today to make up for those 100 years of being unfilial. Right. Both of you have a seat quickly. It had been 5 years since we last saw Ryan, but our relationship hadn't changed. As Ryan entered the living room, my husband immediately joked, looking at his face. Embarrassed by the first parent-child conversation in front of his fiancée, I glanced at her face to see her expression relaxing slightly. Relieved, I went to the kitchen to make some coffee. Sarah works at the same company as me. Oh, so you're both in office equipment sales? No, Sarah is in a different department, she's not in sales. Also, I changed jobs 3 years ago, we met at the new company. I see. You quit your previous job then? Yeah. By the way, we've moved and now live surprisingly close, about an hour away by car. While making coffee, I listened carefully to the conversation coming from the living room and checked on the three of them. The conversation mainly involved my husband and Ryan, while his fiancée seemed to be looking around the room, perhaps feeling a bit out of place. I decided to offer her a lifeline. Did you notice something that caught your eye? I placed the coffee on the table and addressed Ryan's fiancée. My question paused the conversation between my husband and Ryan, hopefully starting a discussion among all four of us. However, still a bit nervous, Ryan's fiancée misspoke. No, nothing in particular. I just heard from Ryan that you run a factory. Expected a fancier house? Sorry for disappointing you. We're not the wealthy type of business owners, but the poorer kind. Watch your words, it's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Don't worry, no need to rush. It's all good. My husband and I couldn't help but laugh at the words of Ryan's fiancée. Ryan, embarrassed, looked down. Neither of us was angry, in fact, her slip made the conversation easier. Seeing us laugh, Ryan's fiancée realized we were easygoing and gradually began to speak more openly. This smoothed the conversation, and we managed to bond successfully. Initially, I was intimidated by her stylish and beautiful appearance, but she turned out to be quite friendly. It seemed like we could get along well in the future. 3 months after the marriage introduction, Ryan got married successfully. They didn't live with us, so my life didn't change much, but there were small differences. I found some tasty-looking sweets online and ordered some. I arranged for them to be delivered to you as well, so please try them. You bought them again? I told you it's okay. I want someone to share opinions with. My husband just eats without saying anything. I can imagine that. He's kind of unemotional, isn't he? It seems so. He only used to come home for Christmas, right? From now on, we thought we'd visit during Easter and Christmas, if that's okay with you? Of course, I'm looking forward to it. Once Ryan got married, his wife began contacting us regularly instead of him. She even showed thoughtfulness by occasionally sending us things. This is perhaps the difference between men and women. Several months passed, and during their first Easter visit as a married couple, Ryan's wife mentioned they would come to our house. I put extra effort into preparing lunch, but this lunch inadvertently caused a small incident. Sarah, did the meal not suit your taste? No, that's not it. I'll eat now. Ryan's wife smiled as she ate the lunch I prepared, but I could sense her smile was forced. Concerned by her reaction, I kept glancing at her expression. In contrast, my husband and Ryan were having a lively conversation while eating. Eventually, Ryan's wife didn't finish her meal, leaving some behind. After lunch, as I was cleaning up the dishes alone, Ryan approached me quietly. Mom, what were you thinking? It's Sarah's first Easter visit, and you serve a bowl dish for lunch. Isn't that too rough? Oh. Really? I just wanted the younger generation to try it. I get that you're good at making bowl dishes, but you need to choose the right time and occasion. If you don't make something more elaborate or order takeout, it might seem like you're slacking. Sarah was worried you might dislike her. I didn't mean that. But yes, you're right. Sorry. I didn't intend to skimp on lunch, so there was no real need to apologize. However, even if it was a misunderstanding, I felt bad for making Ryan and his wife uncomfortable and found myself apologizing. After the bowl incident, the contacts from Ryan's wife, which used to occur every 2 or 3 months, ceased. They visited again the following Christmas, but after that, they stopped coming for Easter. I regret serving a bowl dish during their first visit. Seeing my regret, my husband kindly spoke to me. Wasn't that bowl dish one of your proud creations? It's been praised by many, so you should be more confident. The lack of contact from Sarah isn't related to the dish. They are both in their 30s and busy with work. It's probably just that they are busy. They'll contact us again eventually. Remember, it was the same when Ryan got married, right? Michael's words are all true. I felt a bit more confident because of what he said. Whenever I get panicked or anxious, he always has something to say. His words might seem careless, like I shouldn't worry or that I'm overthinking things. However, his words make me feel better. There have been times when I was annoyed by his nonchalant attitude, but looking back, his words have often been a great comfort to me. After 30 years of marriage, I've just come to realize this. Surely, I'll continue to rely on him. However, I thought this just as Michael fell ill, creating a situation where I couldn't rely on him as much. I'm sorry. It looks like I won't be able to work anymore. This is my retirement. Michael seemed pleased to be able to retire while lying in the hospital bed. However, knowing that he had recently enjoyed his work, he must feel regretful about retiring just as he started to enjoy his job. I can't tinker with cars, but I'll continue with the work I can do. That way, if your health improves and you want to come back to work, you can, right? I'm 64 years old. If I've fallen ill, there's no coming back, right? You're only 64. There are people working past 70, so it's fine. Besides, I want to keep working because I want to. Do what you want. For now, I'm retired. All right, all right. Michael responded with a firm tone, but his expression wasn't entirely serious. His words and demeanor at 60 made my motivation for work double. Despite our wishes, Michael's condition worsened. Naturally, he couldn't return to work, and a year passed in no time. There was another problem, besides his illness. We had informed Ryan about his father's illness, but throughout the year, we neither saw Ryan and his wife nor heard from them. When I told Ryan over the phone that his father had fallen ill, he said, "Dad's sick? Got it. I'll come by sometime." What does sometime mean for Ryan? 2 more years passed, and 3 years after Michael fell ill, he passed away without Ryan and Sarah ever showing their faces. He was only 67. A bit early, huh? Well, he struggled a lot when he was younger, probably shortened his lifespan. So, when should I come back? When I informed Ryan over the phone that Michael had passed away, he showed no sadness. Instead, he made incredible remarks that mocked the hard work Michael had done for the family and indicated he had no intention of helping with the funeral. I was angered by Ryan's cold response, but I didn't have the time or the emotional space to argue. After hanging up, I took a deep breath and busied myself with the necessary arrangements and cleanup to distract from my feelings. In the end, Ryan did not help with any funeral preparations, and by the time the funeral was over, he had disappeared. Calls to him went unanswered. Perhaps it's time to reconsider our relationship with Ryan and his wife. A little over a month after Michael's funeral, I had calmed down somewhat, but still no word from Ryan. Why had the attitude of Ryan and his wife, who initially had a good relationship with us, changed so drastically? As I wondered this and prayed at the family altar, I heard a familiar voice at the door. "Mom. Are you there?" It seems Ryan and his wife had come. As I headed to greet them at the entrance, I heard them barge into the house and head straight for the living room. I redirected myself from the entrance to the living room. "Ah, there you are." As I entered the living room, Ryan and his wife were sprawled out in the exact spot where Michael used to sit. I tried to keep my breathing calm as I listened to them. "What are you here for? It's about time we discussed the inheritance, right? Of course, we came to say we don't need anything." "What?" I was surprised by Ryan's words, thinking they were after Michael's estate. Amused by my reaction, Ryan and his wife continued to smirk and talk. "I know. Dad's factory was built on leased land, and when it's returned, it will cost several tens of thousands to demolish, right? A month has passed since Dad died and the factory is still untouched, which means there's no money because he was a poor businessman, right? The house is an old wreck built over 30 years ago and hardly worth anything. So, taking something that won't make any money is just a hassle, and we'll leave all the rest to you, Mom." A hassle, for that reason. Isn't that reason enough? I looked it up, and cleaning up the factory costs quite a bit, doesn't it? "Mother, are you okay with money? What are you talking about? That's why we're saying to take care of everything troublesome. See, this is why I told you there's no need to keep Mom and Dad happy. Really disappointing. I had a slight hope, because you said you were running a factory. Well, the world isn't so sweet, is it? Wait. Can you explain clearly what you're saying?" As Ryan and his wife rapidly continued with their incomprehensible conversation, I got irritated and raised my voice. However, they were not fazed by my shouting and began to answer my questions honestly. "When we got married, we got along with you in case the factory business went well so we could get some money. Ryan had been estranged from you, so if we wanted money, we had to be on good terms, right?" I said it was pointless, though. I thought there might be a chance, but it seemed there wasn't any hope right away, so we stopped bothering. We even ate that poor-smelling bowl dish and made annoying phone calls, all for nothing. You don't know how hard it is to run a factory, so thinking there's a chance isn't strange. It was really the worst. Dad reeked of oil and never took us on a trip because he made so little money. But that was because he was cutting living expenses to send Ryan to college, right? Yeah, I got to college, but but that doesn't change my hate for Dad, Mom, and this house. I just played the good son because I didn't want him to get mad and not pay for college. I can't believe I endured 4 years. Well, consider it a thank you for paying the tuition and letting you experience a good parent-child relationship. My anger grew as Ryan and his wife's true feelings came to light. Had we been happy for nothing about their marriage? Does Ryan not appreciate Michael's hard work at all? My breathing became rougher as my anger became uncontrollable. Mother, your face is all red. Were you shocked to hear my husband's true feelings? You don't need a son like that anymore, do you? What? Please cut ties with me as a parent. Mom, you're not only out of money, you might end up in debt from cleaning up the factory, right? It's troublesome if you're targeted for money. And, I hate it when you're broke and in debt, yet you still ask for care. I see. I understand now. I made a list of the things Dad left behind, but do you want to check it? I don't need it, I don't need it. There's nothing of value there anyway. Then, I'll take everything that Dad left behind. That's fine, right? Yeah, that's fine. Then, please take care of everything else. Just before my anger exploded, Ryan and his wife left. When the source of my anger disappeared from my sight, I couldn't help but laugh unexpectedly. Surely, they will regret not taking anything. 2 years after my husband passed away, I turned 65. Today, I was wandering around outside to meet someone I knew from work. It's quite tough moving around at this age. I decided to take a break and sat on a bench outside the supermarket to have a simple lunch. The supermarket was bustling with various people, including families with children. I thought of someone's face from when they were that small and cute. Was it wrong to think that? I ended up encountering someone I didn't want to see. Hey, isn't that you, Mom? It really is. Long time no see. Are you having lunch here? And from that food truck over there? That's quite a luxurious meal. Luxurious? You demolished the factory, right? I passed by the other day and it was gone. You must have spent the non-existent money on demolishing it, right? You have no money and yet, a food truck bowl is a luxury item, isn't it? What do you usually eat? Beans? Bread? 2 years have passed and it seems Ryan and his wife haven't changed at all. However, I have nothing to say to Ryan and his wife anymore. Ignoring their irritating words, I walked to the food truck where I bought the bowl to dispose of the empty container. Still not satisfied with teasing me, Ryan and his wife followed me, continuing to talk as I ignored them. Hey, don't ignore us. What kind of poor life are you leading now? Are you still working, or are you living on a pension? Can you live on just your pension? If you can't live on a pension, you can receive welfare, right? Are you living on welfare? I've never seen someone living on welfare. How is life at the bottom of welfare? Exasperated, I let out a sigh. If I keep ignoring them, they seem likely to follow me forever, so I decided to enlighten Ryan and his wife with a fact I didn't necessarily need to share. It was delicious. Keep it up. Look, a poor person telling the food truck guy to keep it up, acting all high and mighty. You should be the one to keep it up. Who do you think you're talking to? Obviously you. The welfare-reliant mother. Welfare? Who's on welfare? What, you're not on welfare? Then, are you still working? What kind of job are you doing? I walked away from the food truck and led Ryan and his wife to a quieter part of the parking lot where we could speak more freely if voices were raised. The food truck where you bought that bowl is my shop. What do you mean? You're the owner of that store? Should I call myself the owner? A single food truck won't make much income, right? It's not just that store. I've managed about 300 stores so far. 300 stores? If you're going to lie, at least make it a believable lie. Right. No way that's believable. Well, look at this then. I took out my smartphone and showed Ryan and his wife a website. Mobile vending. Food truck franchise recruitment. Next, look here. See, my name is written, right? I then navigated from the home page to the company profile page and showed them the name of the representative. Could it be 300 stores is true? Yes, it's true. You had complaints about my bowl dish, right? That was one of the prototypes when I started the food truck. What? You were already starting the food truck back then? Why didn't you tell us? Starting a food truck near 60, it was too trendy to mention, and embarrassing if I failed, right? So, I planned to tell you once it was making a bit of income. But since we hardly communicated and you spoke poorly of Dad, I lost the desire to tell you. 300 franchise contracts mean substantial royalties. Yes. It's less than when Dad was alive, but it might still be more than both of your salaries. Dad? What does he have to do with it? The food trucks rely on what Dad built according to the franchise owner's requests. As the number of contracts increased, Dad's work increased too. Since Dad passed away, I've been relying on a car shop acquaintance, so the income has dropped somewhat. 300 stores, that's a lot of money. Ryan's wife seemed to be calculating the large number in her head. However, the number 300 was a bit of an exaggeration to make things look good. The 300 stores were the total number contracted so far. Some contracts had been terminated, so the current number was less than 100, but I hadn't lied since I originally said I managed 300 stores, not that I currently have 300 contracts. They misunderstood it as currently having 300 contracts. I could correct the misunderstanding, but I felt better letting it stand. So, you've really grown to 300 stores, huh? I never imagined the business would grow this large at the beginning. In fact, I stopped running my own food truck after about a year. Using the connections I made as a business owner, I was able to secure various locations for vending and participate in events, which went quite well. But operating a food truck really requires physical stamina, and starting at 60 was tough. You quit the food truck, then why franchise? When I was quitting, a regular young girl said she wanted to take over. That sparked the idea of franchising. By the way, that girl was the one in front of the supermarket entrance. She's a hard worker. As her reputation grew, young people came to me wanting to do the same. I wanted to support these young people, so I allowed them to choose their shop names and lowered the royalties, which helped it spread even more. Then I made it possible to recruit nationwide on the website, and it ended up expanding to 300 stores. I see. If it's that big, then demolishing the factory should be easy. Why didn't you demolish it for a month? I just put it off because I was too busy with work. Now that Ryan and his wife understood that I had managed franchises for 300 stores over 5 years, they clearly began to choose their words more carefully. From here, I could guess what Ryan and his wife might say next. So, when Dad's inheritance was settled, you were already 3 years into the food truck business, right? You must have been making some money by then, right? So we should get something, shouldn't we? I made it clear that I would take everything, remember? I even prepared the inheritance documents, but you didn't check them, did you? Why should I have to give you money now? Ryan was silenced by my argument. If he had glanced at the inheritance documents I prepared even for a second, none of this would have happened, so his frustration was understandable. However, at this point, his wife realized something and, forgetting I was in front of her, spoke to Ryan. Wait a minute. Kathy is in her mid-60s. Even if we've cut ties, eventually, the money she makes will end up going to Ryan, won't it? That's true. When you think about it, the more she works, the more I stand to gain. Maybe if we take over the company, we could get all the royalties. The two of them were excited, thinking that my earnings would eventually flow to them. It's unfortunate for them to be happy about such thoughts, as I have no intention of letting that happen. Sorry, but I don't plan to leave anything for you. What? I'm getting older, and work is becoming difficult. I'm not taking on new contracts anymore, just supporting the current ones. So, the number of contracts will only decrease, not increase. But the ones that are doing well will continue to operate, right? I'm planning to eventually dismantle the franchise headquarters and have everyone operate independently. Why? It's normal to pass the management to your child, like me, rather than to strangers. Well, many of our contract partners are young people. When I see their efforts, they feel like my own sons and daughters. I'd rather do something for these new children, who I've seen more often than you, who hasn't shown your face since your father fell ill. Upon hearing that I intended to dismantle the franchise headquarters, Ryan collapsed to his knees. His wife tried to console him wrongly. It's okay. The money your mother made will still come to us. How much can a person underestimate others? I certainly don't want to leave anything to such people. Unfortunately, I plan to spend all the money. What? I'm thinking of moving to a high-rise condo for the elderly. It has a full-time care staff, and they provide 24/7 support. It's expensive, but I have my savings and the royalties that come in every month. Plus, I want to travel while I can still walk, and I plan to buy whatever I want without holding back. Looks like my retirement is going to be busy. My declaration of spending caused Ryan's wife to collapse too. How I spend my money is none of Ryan and his wife's business since we've already cut ties. After living as a poor business owner, I want to enjoy some luxury in my old age. Above all, I've decided to spend all the money I've earned. No one can stop my extravagant retirement life now. Well, I just came to see honest, hardworking kids at work, so I'm heading back now. I left Ryan and his wife, who were squatting on the ground unable to move, and walked away from the supermarket without entering the store. Hearing about my success with food trucks, Ryan and his wife must have thought running a food business was easy. They quit their jobs, used their savings, and opened a cafe with additional borrowed money. Naturally, the food and beverage industry isn't that sweet. In my case, it only grew because young franchisees were dedicated. While I initially helped with locations and events, I learned more from the franchisees as time went on. Though Ryan's cafe initially attracted customers, it didn't last. A shop without quality will not keep customers, and within a year, it closed. Hadn't he seen cafes close within a year when he was in college? Had he learned nothing from that? After closing the cafe, the couple had used up their savings and, with no revenue, ended up in debt due to loans and the cost of dismantling the shop interior. Now that they had first-hand experience of how tough it is to earn a daily living through their own business, they shouldn't be able to mock my husband's work anymore. As planned, I moved to the high-rise condo and began reducing my workload. Today, I'm going to check out an event where a child from a nearby area who is working hard has set up a booth.
Hey, long time no see. You've really turned into an old lady, huh?
We are divorced, you know. You could at least try to be a bit more considerate in the way you talk.
We used to be married, so I thought there's no need to hold back speaking in a casual way like that. Since our divorce, what have you been up to? Right after we split, I got married, you know. And right after getting married, I found out my wife was pregnant. Turns out she was already pregnant when we divorced. If you're not infertile, kids come easy. Now I'm living happily with my wife and son.
That's nice. I'm glad you're happy.
What about you? Oops, my bad. Infertile and forever alone, huh? Over 30 and you're unable to have kids, which means no one's going to want you, right?
I divorced my ex-husband 15 years ago because of infertility. At a reunion, I bumped into my ex-husband who boasted about his family and tried to look better than me. However, it seems he's making a big mistake. Huh? Who are you talking about? I'll correct his misunderstanding now. I'm sure it will leave him feeling frustrated. Also, while telling him the truth, I'll throw in a little extra details. Out of mischief, I told my ex-husband something I didn't need to say. That comment far exceeded my expectations and drove him to madness. I am Alyssa. I work at a consulting firm and I'm 28. I plan to get married soon and will be introducing him to my parents shortly. My husband-to-be, John, is 28 and works as a salesperson for a major manufacturer. We've been friends since kindergarten through middle school. We went to different high schools and moved away from our hometown after graduating from college. A few years after starting our jobs, we discovered through social media that our workplaces were close, and we met up for the first time since middle school. Meeting an old friend from our hometown as adults felt like a typical romantic scenario, and we started dating, eventually leading to our engagement.
Do you think it'll be okay? I mean, won't your dad hate me?
Don't worry so much.
But your dad is a CEO, right? When we were kids, I didn't really think about that, but now that I'm a working adult, it's natural to feel nervous, right?
My husband kept adjusting his straight tie and wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It made me feel nervous too. True, my dad runs a metal processing company, but it's a small business in a rural area. The company used to be quite large, but it has significantly downsized. Moreover, my dad isn't exactly a commanding presence.
If you're okay with having my daughter as your wife, take her as much as you want. But remember, no returns.
My husband's intention disappeared within a minute thanks to my dad's easygoing nature.
I wouldn't do that even if you asked me to.
By the end of the visit, even my husband was joking around. My mom and I exchanged looks, feeling relieved. I thought that everything went well, but on the way home, my husband seemed a bit concerned.
Today, hearing about the factory and the company, seems your dad's business isn't doing too well, is it?
It's not as good as it used to be. Well, that's just how times change.
Aren't you a management consultant? Can't you do something?
Do you have any idea how hard it is to turn a company around? I'm working a job and I can't just help out with my dad's business on the side. If I were to do it, I'd have to quit my current job and join my dad's company full time.
I see. Being an only child, I guess you plan to quit your job someday and take over and revitalize that company.
That's not going to happen. My dad doesn't want me to suffer by taking over the business. He plans to sell the company in the future. So until my dad retires, I'm just giving him simple advice to keep the company going.
Okay, that makes sense.
Knowing there's no need to worry about my dad's company, my husband's expression softened. I was pleased that he cared about my dad, and my expression softened too. Half a year later, we got married.
I'm going to have some coffee. Do you want your usual tea?
Yes, thank you. As I was cleaning the dinner dishes, my husband made my tea. He even timed it so the tea wouldn't cool down while I finished. Being a salesperson, my husband is very considerate. He often anticipates what I want without me having to say anything. With such a considerate husband, there's no reason for me to be dissatisfied, and our married life is going smoothly. However, 2 years into our marriage, I wasn't dissatisfied with our married life, but I started to feel a bit anxious. Our relationship was good, and our intimate life was reasonably frequent, but 2 years into our marriage, we still hadn't been blessed with a child.
There's no need to rush. It'll happen eventually.
But I'm already 30. I'm a little anxious. While lounging on the living room sofa and playing with his phone, my husband responded lightly to my concerns. Normally, I might get angry that he wasn't taking the conversation more seriously. However, I knew he was trying to ensure I didn't feel too anxious or responsible about not being able to have children. Like me, my husband is an only child, and his parents were both working. As a result, he often spent time alone at home, longing for a family life, unlike me. I never felt lonely like he did because I would go to my parents' office after school, always surrounded by my parents and their employees. But I understand the importance of spending time with people. Therefore, I want to fulfill his wishes. I also want a child myself. And just to be safe, I'm going to see a doctor soon.
Is that really necessary?
If there's nothing wrong, then that's great. But if there is, it's better to know the cause, right?
Well, maybe that's true.
The following weekend, I went to the hospital alone. There are two reasons why I went to the hospital by myself. First, I thought that even if I got checked, they would probably tell me there's nothing wrong. Second, if there was something wrong, I didn't know what kind of face to make if my husband was there with me. I came to the hospital without thinking too seriously and waited for my name to be called while thinking about shopping for the way home. The tests were done quickly, but the results would come later, so I went home that day. 2 weeks later, the results of the tests were given to me. Why is it that bad news always seems to come first? After hearing the results, I didn't go shopping that day, but just walked home looking at the ground. I found out I'm infertile.
I see.
The night I heard the results at the hospital, I told my husband about my infertility. I chose to talk about it over dinner, hoping it would distract me a bit, but my words made the atmosphere at home really awkward, and both of us stopped eating. However, it wasn't all hopeless. There was still some hope. The doctor said that my infertility could be treated with about a 30% of success rate if treated properly. As you get over 30, the success rate of treatment drops. It looks like I just made it in time.
30%? And that rate is going to drop from now on, huh?
While I started moving my fork again, my husband's remained still. It seems there's a difference in perception between us regarding the number 30%. When I was told I was infertile, I despaired thinking I couldn't have children. However, hearing the 30% chance, I was happy thinking it was not a low number at all. But it seems like the number 30% didn't seem very high to my husband. Seeing his disappointed face made my fork stop again. Since that day, our marriage, which had been going smoothly, became somewhat awkward. Are you going to be home late again tomorrow?
Yeah.
As I was cleaning up the dishes, I spoke to my husband's back as he rested in the living room, and he responded disinterestedly. Since it became known that I am infertile, my husband started coming home late. He says he's busy with work, but probably he wants to reduce the time he spends at home as much as possible. Therefore, on his days off, he goes out early in the morning alone and doesn't come home until late at night. Because of my husband's late return, I started eating dinner by myself. Also, my husband stopped sleeping in the bedroom and started sleeping on the living room sofa. Even though he is in the house, many things became separate in our married life. I felt lonely as my husband's heart drifted away, but knowing the reason was me, I couldn't blame him. Half a year later, our marital relationship had completely cooled down and we hardly talked at home anymore. Today, being a holiday, my husband left the house early in the morning. Seeing him putting on his shoes at the entrance, I felt somewhat relieved. When my husband left, I felt a little lighter and could do laundry a bit more efficiently. However, as I was about to throw one of his shirts into the washing machine, I sighed. I thought, there's foundation on this again. This won't come off. Foundation was on my husband's shirt, but I wasn't surprised. It has been happening occasionally for the last 2 or 3 months. Since our relationship had already cooled off, I had no intention of making a big deal about infidelity. I spread out the shirt with foundation on it and resigned myself that it was probably time to end our married life. My husband probably felt the same. That's why he didn't bother hiding the infidelity and carelessly left shirts with foundation in the laundry basket. That night, I brought up divorce. Shall we end it? If we divorce, you can be with your new woman, right?
What? You knew?
I don't need any pretense. Since I'm not going to demand any compensation for the infidelity, can we separate smoothly?
Understood.
I have a job, so I don't need money. Moreover, my husband works for a major manufacturer, so even if I demanded compensation for the infidelity, it wouldn't hurt him much. Therefore, I would be happier if we could separate smoothly rather than having a messy divorce negotiation. My husband seemed to have anticipated what I would say and accepted the divorce without a flicker of his eyebrows. However, although I'm not asking for compensation, I was curious enough to want to know a little about his affair partner. What is she like, the other woman?
She's 2 years younger, and we met through our hobby of fishing.
Ah, so you were fishing on weekends. It's nice she would date a married man like you. I hope you haven't hidden the fact that you're married, right?
I've been honest with her. I told her I plan to divorce and that our relationship is with the intention of remarrying. It's just a matter of waiting for her now.
Waiting for her? You mean it's not an affair on her side, right?
No, she's single. I succeeded in a love affair.
I had a lot I wanted to say after hearing my husband's story. However, saying something unnecessary here might upset him and complicate the divorce. So I swallowed the words that had come to my throat. And after that, the divorce was completed without issue. My husband immediately went to his new partner. Her boyfriend had apparently broken up with her, so they are planning to marry. I had braced myself thinking I would be okay with a divorce, but the shock was surprisingly big when it actually happened. I stayed at home for a while and continued working, but eventually I quit my job and moved back to my parents' house. 15 years after returning to my parents' house, surely the wounds from the divorce have healed, and I've become completely healthy. The time I was married has already been pushed to the corner of my memory, almost forgotten. Just as I was settling into this new life, I received a notification of a middle school reunion. There's a chance that my ex-husband, an old classmate, will attend. During the divorce, I prioritized a smooth separation, so I didn't get to say much. I didn't demand any compensation for the infidelity, but that doesn't mean I wasn't angry about it. Even though it's been 15 years, I thought I'd get a little revenge on my husband by attending the reunion. However, my little prank ended up greatly disrupting my ex-husband's life. On the day of the reunion, when I arrived at the venue, there were many familiar faces. I caught up with old friends, reminiscing about the past. While enjoying the conversation, a face I had almost forgotten approached from a distance.
Hey, long time no see. You've really turned into an old lady, huh?
My ex-husband, upon seeing me, greeted me with a laugh and an insult. If I'm an old lady, what does that make you? An old man? Just when I was enjoying the conversation, my ex-husband approached with a villainous grin, causing our friends to awkwardly distance themselves from us. We are divorced, you know. You could at least try to be a bit more considerate in the way you talk.
We used to be married, so I thought there's no need to hold back speaking in a casual way like that. Since our divorce, what have you been up to? Right after we split, I got married, you know. And right after getting married, I found out my wife was pregnant. Turns out she was already pregnant when we divorced. If you're not infertile, kids come easy. Now I'm living happily with my wife and son.
That's nice. I'm glad you're happy.
What about you? Oh, my bad. You're infertile and forever alone, huh? Over 30 and unable to have kids. No one's going to want you, right?
Huh? Who are you talking about? My ex-husband started showing off his photos from family outings on his phone and bragging about his new wife and son, trying to one-up me with his happiness. I found his stories dull and listened with an expressionless face. My ex-husband seems to be quite mistaken. Correcting this mistake alone will surely make him feel frustrated. As I was thinking about how to correct his misunderstanding, a little girl came up to me at just the right moment.
Mommy, I made a new friend.
That's great, honey. Mommy is talking with this man right now, so go and play with your new friend a little longer.
Okay.
The girl obediently ran off energetically from the spot.
Hey, who is that kid?
What? She's my daughter. Didn't you know it was okay to bring kids today? Look, there are a few other children here too.
That's not what I mean. Didn't she just call you Mommy?
Yes, that's my daughter, Nicole. She's turning 10 this year.
You were infertile, right? How come you have a child? Oh, I get it. She must be your stepchild from a new marriage?
How rude. Nicole is my biological daughter.
Infertile and yet you have a child? Oh.
Didn't I tell you? Infertility can be treated. You just assumed it couldn't be cured. Sniggers and soft laughter could be heard from around us. My close friends knew about the divorce and that I had given birth to a child. Thus, my ex-husband, who was under the false impression that I couldn't have children and was trying to outshine me with his own, was laughed at by friends. It seems he realized he was being laughed at.
I see. You have a child, so you must have managed to get married again. Congratulations.
Embarrassed by his failed attempt to one-up me with his child, my ex-husband's face turned red. He offered congratulations on my childbirth and remarriage, likely as a way to hide his embarrassment and appear magnanimous.
Who would marry an old lady like you?
It was a workplace romance.
I see. Are you still working at that consulting firm?
Oh, you don't know? I took over my dad's company and now I'm the president. Dad hasn't retired yet. He's still working as the chairman.
What? I thought that company was going to be sold.
I moved back home after our divorce and decided to take over my dad's company. Over these 15 years, it's been tough, but now our annual sales are reaching $30 million. Well, we've moved from a small to mid-sized company.
What? $30 million?
Among local friends, it's somewhat well known that I've expanded my dad's company. Therefore, my ex-husband, who knew nothing, was laughed at again by friends.
You said running a company wasn't easy.
That's right, but after the divorce I quit my job, so I could dedicate myself to rebuilding Dad's company. I did manage to grow my dad's company, but it was a continuous struggle. Initially, employees who had a bad impression of me suddenly coming back to take over the company were numerous. Therefore, I began by actively communicating with the staff to gain their trust. That alone took 2 years. Having gained the trust of the employees, I used my consulting experience to have my work skills recognized. This took about 3 years. During this time, I worked so hard that my physical and mental health suffered, but my current husband supported me through it. He also supported me through infertility treatments, and 10 years ago, we were able to have our daughter, Nicole. For 10 years after Nicole's birth, I continued to work tirelessly with the employees. And before I knew it, the company had broken through the annual sales barrier of $10 million commonly faced by enterprises. And now we're growing towards $30 million.
You are the president of a company with annual sales of $30 million?
Yes, you gave up on me because of my infertility and went off with another woman, not knowing I had the potential to become the president of a $30 million company. But I was able to have a child. How do you feel now? And how about you? Have you managed to become at least a sales manager by now? This time I asked my ex-husband with a villainous smile on my face. I don't know what his current position at the company is, but with a major manufacturer, there must be plenty of competition. Seeing my ex-husband silently gritting his teeth, I was certain he hadn't made much of a career advancement. I successfully countered his attempt to one-up me about his child and took the upper hand in our discussion about work. Seeing my ex-husband's frustrated face, I was already satisfied, but I decided to throw in one more bombshell. By the way, John, you said that your wife got pregnant right after you got married, right? You married right after we divorced, but your wife had just broken up with her boyfriend too, right? Isn't that really...
Are you suggesting it's not my child? It's definitely my child.
Saying that doesn't make it very convincing. You were having an affair, and so was she, right? Adultery and cheating, the possibility that my ex-husband's child could belong to someone else. These topics captured the interest of everyone around. So not only close friends of mine and my ex-husband, but also many others gathered around us. It was a bit embarrassing to be the center of attention, but clearly my ex-husband was the villain in the scene. Cold stares were focused on him. Realizing he was receiving cold looks, he seemed to flee from the venue. Satisfied with making my ex-husband embarrassed, I resumed conversing with my friends. My revenge on my ex-husband was completed. From now on, I suppose I will gradually forget about him. That's what I thought, but about a month after the reunion, my ex-husband called me. He probably got my number from a friend at the reunion. Wondering what he could possibly say, I reluctantly answered the phone.
Hey, did you know?
I racked my brain, wondering what he could be referring to, but couldn't think of anything, so I felt smoke almost coming out of my head. I decided to just ask him directly. What are you talking about? What is it?
It's about my child. Just like you said, it turns out he really isn't my child.
What's that? I shouldn't laugh, but I couldn't help bursting out laughing. My ex-husband seemed to have taken my words seriously and got a DNA test done. The results showed that the child my ex-husband and his new wife had was not biologically related to him.
How did you know that? And why didn't you tell me?
I didn't know either. I just thought it would be good if you got a little insecure and talked to your wife about it. Maybe even had a little fight. I never imagined it would actually be true. Was your wife cuckolding you?
No, my wife didn't know either. She thought the child was mine.
She had a boyfriend until just before she got pregnant, and neither of you bothered to check if the child was yours. That's your own fault. But you've been raising the child as your own for 15 years, so even if you're not biologically related, you're going to keep raising him as your child, right?
What? No way. I've been tricked into raising someone else's child for 15 years. Of course, we're getting divorced.
What? Just like during our divorce discussions, there's a lot I want to say to my ex-husband now. However, people's values vary, and it's not my place to comment on someone else's family matters. So I swallowed the words that were on the tip of my tongue. So you're getting a divorce?
That's the problem, I can't.
Why can't you get a divorce?
My wife won't agree to it.
Upon discovering the child wasn't his, my ex-husband tried to start divorce proceedings. At that time, his new wife put the divorce on hold and first reached out to her boyfriend from 15 years ago. Probably after the divorce, she wanted to see if she could rely on her former boyfriend. However, after she told the ex-boyfriend about the child, he became unreachable and apparently quit his job and disappeared. I can understand the feeling of wanting to flee upon receiving a sudden call from an ex-girlfriend saying you have a child. Unable to rely on her ex-boyfriend, my ex-husband's new wife, not wanting to be abandoned, is refusing the divorce. She gave birth to someone else's child, right? Doesn't that count as a reason for divorce?
That's where it gets complicated. It's not exactly infidelity since the child was conceived before our marriage. We both thought it was our child.
Apparently, the situation between my ex-husband and his new wife is messier than I imagined. My ex-husband explained in detail, but it involved legal issues that I couldn't fully grasp. However, I did understand some of it. Firstly, my ex-husband and his new wife believed the child was theirs, so legally, my ex-husband is recognized as the father. For my ex-husband to push through with a divorce, he needs to prove that he is not the child's father and legally nullify the parental relationship. However, there have been Supreme Court cases where it was decided that a paternal relationship could not be denied based on DNA test results, making this quite challenging. Even if the parental relationship is nullified, my ex-husband and his new wife believed the child was theirs, and neither investigated the child's paternity, so it's not entirely the new wife's fault. Since the new wife didn't intentionally deceive my ex-husband, there's a high possibility that a divorce might not be granted, using the child as a reason. In essence, the new wife, abandoned by the real father, refuses to divorce my ex-husband. My ex-husband wants to divorce, but not being the biological father is not accepted as a reason for divorce. That seems to be the situation. So basically, you want a divorce but can't, right?
That's right. I don't know what to do. Do I have to keep raising someone else's child?
Hearing my ex-husband's words, I sighed. You say it's someone else's child, but isn't he essentially your child now?
What? Why would he be my child? He's the child of my wife's ex-boyfriend.
I thought a bit of arguing might be okay, so I spoke a bit more forcefully, but it seems nothing resonates with my ex-husband. It appears that anything I say would be pointless. Look, I have nothing more to say to you. You divorced me thinking my infertility was incurable. You stole your new wife from her boyfriend, and you didn't check the paternity of the child. All of these were your decisions. Own up to your decisions and take responsibility. I yelled at my ex-husband and hung up the phone. How pathetic for my ex-husband to whine to his ex-wife, whom he divorced 15 years ago. That day, when I returned home from work, my husband and daughter were happily watching TV in the living room. Watching them from behind, I felt truly glad that I had divorced my ex-husband. Ultimately, unable to get a divorce, my ex-husband has moved out and is living separately from his new wife and child. If the separation lasts for about 3 to 5 years, it could be grounds for divorce. However, until the divorce, he must continue to pay for the living expenses and child support of his estranged wife and child. My ex-husband's child is now 15 years old, so even if they divorce in 3 years, the child will already be of adult age. His new wife, assessing when to let go, is unlikely to resist the divorce next time. Clearly, his new wife is in a winning position in this scenario. Also, they haven't yet told the child about his real father. Therefore, the child resents his mother and him for suddenly leaving the home. If the child resents my ex-husband, he might actually be relieved to learn he is not his biological child when he finds out the truth. However, knowing the truth might also make him dislike my ex-husband even more. When that time comes, I hope he faces the child's anger instead of running away. By then, my ex-husband will have gone through a second divorce and probably be done with marriage for good. My ex-husband, who tried to belittle me because he thought I couldn't have children, ended up being outdone by me in both children and career, and my little mischievous remark turned his life upside down. If he knew this would happen, maybe he should have never tried to make himself look good. I continue to work hard as always. Unlike my ex-husband, our family relationship is healthy. Right now, we're in the middle of discussing where to go on our next holiday.